Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is an epic adventure, with a story that had me on the edge of my seat, characters that made me laugh and cry, and a vast, beautiful open world filled with places to explore and enemies to fight. Rebirth had all of the ingredients for a perfect video game, and for me, this is a game that has flaws, and I will talk about them, but none of the flaws change how I feel about this game. This is a masterpiece, and here are my thoughts on my time playing Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. The original Final Fantasy VII is one of the most beloved and iconic video games of all time, releasing in 1997 for the PlayStation. This game took the world by storm. I was born in 1998, and by the time I was old enough to start playing video games, I was too busy playing games like Crash Bandicoot and Sly Cooper, and I had no interest in this funny-looking JRPG called Final Fantasy. So now, I'm coming at this iconic game as someone who never bothered to play the original classic, and being a brand new fan of the franchise. In my Game of the Year 2023 video, I talked about Final Fantasy XVI and how much I enjoyed that game. I still think that it's a great entry point into the series, and because I liked it so much, I decided that I needed to play more games in the franchise. So why not start with the most iconic one of them all? And the timing was perfect. With Rebirth coming out earlier this year, I played through Remake, and I loved it. It served as a great introduction into the world of Gaia. Remake is carried by its story and characters. I have some issues with Remake. First being, the side quest felt unimportant to the story and characters, and I just wanted to get back to the main story. And the combat was good in Remake, but my big problem with Remake was it never felt like my party was fighting as a team. Thankfully, this was fixed with the intermission DLC that sees you playing as the Materia Hunter Yuffie, the ninja assassin sent by the government of Wutai to work with Avalanche to steal an ultimate materia from Shinra. Not only is she a great character, but she is a blast to play as in combat. The DLC introduces synergy abilities that add party attacks to combat, and it makes such a great difference to the combat and had me really excited for Rebirth. Well, now, I can finally talk about Rebirth. With Rebirth being the second game in the Remake trilogy, its story very much feels like the middle of one big story. The ending of Remake had me filled with questions, and the ending of Rebirth has me asking even more questions. And while I can talk about the story of this game, I would rather wait until the final game is done, and I'll do a deep dive into the entire story of Final Fantasy VII. If you're looking for a great story, then Rebirth is the game for you. The main reason why this story is so great is because of the characters. The main cast of this game might be my favorite cast of characters in any video game. They all work so well together, and most importantly, they all have their moments to shine. We learn so much about these characters' backstories, motivations, and goals. By the time the credits rolled, I just wanted more time with these characters, and thankfully, we'll have one more game with them.
Join the parade. Hide in plain sight. Get in, get close, get answers.
I'm gonna come back to the characters, but first I gotta talk about the combat. Now, I mentioned earlier that the combat in Remake was missing that feeling of teamwork between the party members. Well, Rebirth brings the sauce when it comes to combat. Whether you're fighting grunts out in the open world, taking on region-specific combat assignments, or boss fights in the main quest, it's always a blast using all of your active time battle and synergy abilities to take down your foes in style. Rebirth makes it easier for you to dodge and parry attacks, so there's more ways to defend other than holding down the block button. The boss fights are where the combat really starts to sing. Figuring out which materia is best for the specific boss is a fun challenge, and then assembling the best party for that boss is so satisfying. Building up your ATB to unleash a barrage of synergy and special attacks is so badass, and calling upon your summon when all hope is lost as you turn the tide of battle is so over the top and cinematic. I hope that the next main entry in the Final Fantasy series uses the active time battle system. It's time to rank all of the party members. I'm ranking them based on how much I like them as the characters and how much I like playing as them.
Should probably wait
Kicking
for
things off in last place at number 7, I have Kate Sith. He was the easiest character to rank. Now, he joins the party kind of midway to late through the game, so maybe if he was in the entire game, he would be higher, but as a character, I didn't have a strong emotional connection with him, and I only used him in my party when I was forced to use him. Now, the rest going forward are all amazing, and I love them all, but unfortunately, someone had to be 6. And if you ask me to rank the characters in a week, the top 6 could be completely different. So, at number 6, we have Tifa. You can put your pitchforks down. She's an amazing character. She's fun to play as. However, I found myself not using her as much, so it wouldn't be right for me to put her any higher. At number 5, I have Yuffie. Yuffie is a top 3 character to play as, and that is what slightly puts her over Tifa. At number 4, I have our main character, Cloud. Cloud as a character is the most bland of the bunch, but that is by design, and there's story reasons why he doesn't have much character depth. Cloud is a blast to use in combat as he is able to deal both ranged and melee attacks, making him the most versatile in my opinion. At number 3, I have Red 13. Red is a lot of fun as a melee character, and he goes through a lot of character development, going from the Shinra Lab experiment to learning about where he came from and what his endgame goal is. Was awesome to see that development with this character. At number 2, I have Aerith. She is the heart and soul of this game's story, and while she's not my favorite to play as in combat, she has so many amazing moments in the story that I couldn't put her any lower than 2. And at number 1, I have the leader of Avalanche, Barret. Barret is such an amazing character, and watching his friendship with Cloud deepen was great, and it felt like he would do anything for anyone in the party. His backstory was also really handled extremely well, and was the turning point in the story for me, where I felt the story went from great to amazing. I also got Barret as my date at the Golden Saucer, and it was incredible to watch. And he's fun to play as and has some cool abilities, but it's his character that really carries him to the number 1 spot.
Wasn't much interested in any kind of work. I was young and wanted to enjoy my youth. And then I met a sweet girl named Myrna. Knew right away she was the one. But Myrna, she wasn't buying what I was selling. Told me she was in the market for a man, not a selfish little boy. If I was gonna win her heart, I had some growing up to do. Otherwise, she'd never give me the time of day.
Next up, I wanted to talk about the world, exploration, and the music, as I feel these 3 all kind of go hand in hand with each other. So the biggest difference between Remake and Rebirth is Remake was a linear game as it took place in the city of Midgar. There wasn't much variety in locales, whereas Rebirth sees us on a grand adventure through multiple regions, all with different ways to explore the region. Exploring these regions is enjoyable on its own, but the music really brings everything together. Every single track that would play was just incredible and really helped convey how epic the adventure is that you go on with these characters. Whether it was an over-the-top action set piece or a tear-jerker scene, the music was always on point, and I don't know if there's a game that can match up with the Rebirth soundtrack. Another point on exploration, each region has different chocobos for you to ride, or a giant dune buggy car in one of the regions. One of the chocobos is used to run up specific mountainsides, one is able to float above water like it's using the FLUDD from Super Mario Sunshine, and another had you soaring through the air using giant fans. I appreciated the variety, but sometimes it would be annoying to try to reach a destination, especially in the Gongaga region that had you using these giant mushrooms to jump from different platforms, but there was no way to know where a mushroom would send you without doing trial and error. It's a minor complaint, but it's worth mentioning. Side quests are usually hit or miss in video games, as usually they feel like they're just added on to pad out the game, and it just ends up kind of ruining the pacing of the game. I put in around 102 hours before I rolled the credits, and this game's main story can be beaten in roughly like 45-50 hours. And I'm by no means a completionist in video games. It takes a special game for me to want to experience everything in the game, and this was a game where I wanted to do everything. The side quests in this game actually matter. They actually add meaningful moments to the game's story, and I would recommend playing all of the side quests so you don't miss out on some great moments with these characters. The most skippable portion of the game is the open world content. This includes activating towers that reveals more stuff on the map to do, doing combat assignments that have a special boss for each region, expedition intel which gives you some lore about the region, Moogle emporiums which have you rounding up Moogles in time trial minigames, divine intel which helps you fight the summons in Chadley's combat simulator. Chadley's combat simulator is great if you want to become a master at combat, but all of this stuff is completely skippable. I personally enjoy doing all the stuff, but it does get in the way of the pacing of the story. I would go hours before continuing to the next main quest marker because I wanted to finish a region before moving on. Again, I only did it because I really enjoyed the side stuff, but it's not for everyone. Last but not least, it's time to talk about the minigames. The minigames are so good at keeping the gameplay loop from getting stale. Not every minigame is great, but they're all worth trying, and some of them are a lot of fun. And I found myself trying to get the high scores on a lot of them. Every region has a handful of minigames to try out, and then there's the Gold Saucer, which is the game's amusement park area. This is a minigame paradise that you spend tens of hours at. Pirates Rampage is a fun little carnival game shooter. 3D Brawler is a Punch-Out-esque game that I personally hated. Jump Frog is like that one Fall Guys level and was fun. Run Wild is a Rocket League little ripoff starring Red 13. Galactic Saviors plays like a Dave & Buster's game, like a Space Invaders Star Fox shooter. Gears and Gambit sucks, but Fort Condor is back from remake, and that's still awesome. The Chocobo races are a blast, and they kind of scratch that Mario Kart itch. The piano minigame is also really enjoyable and relaxing. Almost every minigame is at least fun to play once, and that's all you really can ask for from a minigame. All these minigames are just that, minigames. Fun little side distractions that don't really matter, they don't really add much to the overall story. And then there's Queen's Blood. I've never really been one to enjoy board games or card games, but man oh man, Queen's Blood hits different. I wish there was an in-game tracker for Queen's Blood hours because I really would like to know how many hours I spent figuring out how to beat certain opponents and optimizing my deck to be able to handle almost every opponent. Towards the end of the game, there are tough opponents that will require you to use very specific cards, but it's still an amazing game. It's easy to pick up, difficult to master, and once you learn what cards pair well with other cards, you are going to start dominating your opponents. And this game has you on a cruise ship with a Queen's Blood tournament, and the deeper you get into Queen's Blood, the more you'll learn that there's a dark mystery within the game. I don't have the nostalgia that old fans of Final Fantasy VII have. I love Final Fantasy VII Rebirth for what it is at its core, and that it's a fun video game with a phenomenal cast of characters and a story full of twists and turns. Whenever Square Enix is ready to release the final chapter in this trilogy, I'll be there on day one ready for the final part of this unknown journey.